Welcome into Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. I'm Meghan Payton. We have some breaking news in Seattle. Seahawks are expected to part ways with defensive coordinator Ken Norton Jr. Per Seattle Times, they were the first to let us know this, that the Seahawks are expected to be done with Ken Norton Jr., moving on. And, it's not a huge surprise. Norton's been Seattle's defensive coordinator since 2018. It hasn't been fantastic for him since. The Seahawks allowed the second most yards per game in team history this year, ranking 379.1 average yards per game. The only time that they were worse was in 2001. So this is not a great look for the Seahawks defense. I think as we look into this more, it's going to seem a little bit more realistic why Seattle is choosing to do this. But the direct quotes coming from Bob Condotta and Adam Jude over at Seattle Times in their article was, in a significant shakeup of their defensive coaching staff, the Seahawks are expected to part ways with defensive coordinator Ken Norton Jr. and defensive passing game coordinator Andre Curtis, sources close to the team told the Seattle Times. So obviously I'm going to give you guys my take on all of this, but of course I'm going to ask you, what is your one-word reaction to the Ken Norton Jr. news? Go right now to the comments and let me know how you are feeling. My one word is change. I think that we kind of knew something was going to happen. We knew something was approaching because you cannot have a 7-10 season and not expect change. So we knew that Pete Carroll's job pretty much seemed secure. John Schneider ended up being secure as well. So then what needs to change? Players are definitely going to be changing soon, but you look at your own coaching staff. Ken Norton Jr. was someone that has kind of been on the hot seat for a sec now. Now, of course, it seems like it's going to be official very soon. Ken Norton Jr. has been with Seattle, as we said, since 2018. Ups and downs, but just not enough to prove himself here with the Seahawks. So we're going to get more in depth into what the Seahawks defense did this year, what they did in the past, and who's going to be replacing Ken Norton Jr. But first, guys, I'm asking you guys to help us out over here at Chat Sports. We are on a mission to get to 24,000 subscribers by the end of the week. We're promising we're going to try to do our best to keep you updated with everything going around Seattle. We're currently at 23,782. So help us out here at Chat Sports. If you want the Seahawks updates to keep on coming, make sure you are subscribed to our channel. So we look back at this Seahawks defense this year, and it just wasn't great, especially at the beginning. The defense started historically bad, allowing an average of 451 yards through the first 5 games. Now, this is nothing new. Last year, the Seahawks also dealt with a slow start on defense. Both years, though, they did find a way to kind of rebound. Now, this year, it was a little bit too late. Now the Seahawks are going to be looking to fill the roles of both the defensive coordinator and the passing game coordinator. Now you just look at where the Seahawks stand around the league, and this to me makes sense. You look at the NFL rankings of yards allowed 2021 through 2018, the years that Ken Norton Jr. was in Seattle. This year they were ranked 28th in yards allowed per game. As we said, that's 379.1 yards per game. In 2020 wasn't much better, ranking at 22nd. In 2019, they were 23rd. And so the best Ken Norton Jr. had was in 2018, ranked at 19th. Now, this, of course, doesn't give you the full picture of the defense. You can't just take one stat and jump to conclusions. So I think it's better to just focus on this year. Look at the 2021 defensive stats for Seattle. Points per game, they allowed 21.5. That's 12th. Not too bad. Rushing yards per game, they were 17th in the league. Now, here's where they struggled the most. The passing game. We talked about this. Passing defense has been a problem for Seattle. That's why we keep talking about getting guys that can help with the pass rush. They were ranked 31st this year. Takeaways, they were had 18, so they were ranked 25th. And then in sacks, they were tied for 22nd. So these numbers aren't fantastic. You look at this and you say, hey, We've got to improve. How can we? It's going to start here with our defensive coordinator. So, I'm hurting for Ken Norton Jr. and his family. I'm sure he's going to find a place somewhere, but I kind of think Seattle is doing the right thing. I'll ask you guys this though. Was this the right decision by Seattle? If you think so, type Y for yes or type N for no. I do think that this change will be good ultimately. Like we said, you just can't expect things to stay the same and hope for change. That's not realistic. And throughout the season, I remember talking to you guys about, hey, this defense is struggling. Is this Pete Carroll or is this Ken Norton Jr.? Who's controlling this defense? We still don't know the inner dynamics between the two of them during the season, but we do know that Pete Carroll probably had some say in this, and so maybe he's going to take reign, kind of take control over his defense again, have some say into the new hiring, try to kind of change the pace here in Seattle. So I do think that this change will be good. Bob Condotta said that he thinks an official announcement could be made on Wednesday. So as we're saying, this isn't official yet, but all signs are pointing this way. And in the midst of all this news breaking on Monday night, Russell Wilson had to keep positive. He put out a tweet saying Kingdom energy only. So thank you, Russell, for the positive energy. Hats off to him. And speaking of hats, guys, I've got a great deal to tell you guys about over at Fanatics. Go check out some of these awesome Seahawks hats. I think we're on a positive track for the offseason. So if you want to rep your Seattle Seahawks, go to chatsports.com/Seahawks hats. These are on sale right now. You can get one of the hats is like $19. They got a bunch on there for $21. They are running out though, so make sure you go and check it out before they are out of stock. That's chatsports.com/Seahawks hats. All right, now we are going to talk real quickly about Ken Norton Jr. replacements. I'm going to give you guys 5 guys that I think Seattle is going to be looking after, but I will ask you guys first, who do you want replacing Ken Norton Jr.? There's a lot of options. You can clearly go with someone in your own staff. You can go outwards. You could find someone, that's at a different team that could make a lateral move, that could jump up. So I'm asking you guys right now, name me one person that you think would be a good fit to replace Ken Norton Jr. All right, the first guy that I have on my list is Clint Hurtt. That's the guy we keep kind of hearing about as this news broke. He's the Seahawks defensive line coach. Corbin Smith, SI reporter, he tweeted on Monday night saying that I'm told Seahawks are leaning towards elevating Clint Hurtt to defensive coordinator, but other names will be considered with Ken Norton Jr. out. Hurtt has been linked to Miami defensive coordinator job at a college level, so this may be the move to keep him around. And in my opinion, this does make a lot of sense. The Seahawks were second this year in fewest yards allowed per rush. So you take a guy like Hurtt and you think, all right, here are the positives with him. A, he's been a part of this staff, so he knows how Pete Carroll likes to run his defense. It just makes for an easier transition if you're not wanting to completely rebuild and get familiar with a different coach's style. So I do think Clint Hurtt would probably be a very realistic option. Of course, right now we're just going to kind of run through some of the guys we keep hearing about, and we may do this more in depth later on. But the second guy I have for you guys is Ed Donatel. He's the Broncos defensive coordinator. Now, if you didn't know, the Broncos recently fired Vic Fangio, so this leads to the question of what's going to happen to their coaching staff. Typically, when a head coach is fired and a new guy comes in, they like to bring their own guys. That's just typically the way it works in the NFL. And Bob Condotta, who's been keeping us updated all night long, he tweeted out saying that Donatel's first full-time coaching job was in 1983 at Pacific when Pete Carroll was also there. So they go back a long way. Pete Carroll was the defensive coordinator at Pacific, and Donatel was the defensive back coach. So again, that's helpful. Some familiarity there. So if you're not going to go with a guy on your staff currently, maybe go with someone that you have that familiarness with so they can kind of build it together. You know how Pete Carroll likes things done. He also knows how Ed works. So this could be a good option for Seattle. Now, of course, this news is going to keep on coming, and this is why you guys want to stay subscribed or subscribe to Seahawks Today if you have not. If the Seahawks make a move, which they will, we are going to break it down for you guys here at Seahawks today. So go to youtube.com/Seahawks TV or click that big red button, and I promise you will stay in the know on all things Seahawks. All right, we got a couple more names for you guys here. Gus Bradley, this is an interesting one. Raiders defensive coordinator. So if you notice, we are talking a lot about guys whose head coaching jobs are either already fired or they're up in the air. This is where you kind of think about this coaching staff, how it's going to be put together. Well, I'd look out for Gus Bradley if the Raiders do not bring Bisaccia back. Obviously, he's been the interim head coach for the Raiders since John Gruden resigned, but are the Raiders going to keep him? Are they going to go elsewhere? If so, Gus Bradley could be an option. And so this is why I don't think Seattle is going to rush with hiring. They're going to let all of this head coach drama slow down. They're going to let the hiring process happen, see who's left. Right now, it doesn't make sense because a lot of these guys still have their jobs. Like we said, these defensive coordinators are still on a team. So until that kind of shifts, I don't see the reason or need for the Seahawks to make a big jump. All right, next guy I have, and this one is fun, maybe not super realistic, but Dan Quinn, Cowboys defensive coordinator. So this could be, really great for Seattle. It most likely is not going to happen. I'm just being honest with you guys, but it would be, I think, best case scenario. Normally, you don't see a lateral jump, so this would probably only be the case if they were to actually get rid of Mike McCarthy. Those rumors started to come up after the Cowboys' really bad playoff loss. I don't actually see that happening, and so therefore I don't see Dan Quinn going and switching to a defensive coordinator job when in reality he's actually been a name brought up for head coaching positions. So just a fun one to look out for though. But the last guy I'm going to throw on this list is Mike Zimmer, former head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. I would love this for Seattle. Now, I know Mike Zimmer has taken some heat, but I think that he's a really good coach. I think he did struggle a bit in Minnesota, but he was also, kind of dealt a hard hand. I think that Mike Zimmer would also and has been a great defensive coordinator. So Zimmer is obviously going to be filling out the head coaching positions first. He's going to see if he can land another job elsewhere before going back and stepping down to defensive coordinator. But if that were to be the case, I would love Seahawks to, jump on Mike Zimmer. That could be a good duo. I like Zimmer and Pete Carroll joining forces together.